Call this meeting to order, and we're very pleased today to have David Beasley, who is the Executive Director of the World Food Program, who is here with us in Ottawa today. He's also, I noted, a former member of the South Carolina House of Representatives and former governor of the state of South Carolina. So we'd like to welcome you, Mr. Beasley, and we'll give you about 8 minutes for introductory remarks, and then we'll go to a round of questions from each of the parties. So go ahead, Mr. Beasley.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here, and I was trying to really determine how I should go forward when we've got so many tragedies around the world. We're facing so many wars, conflicts, and disasters. Where do you start? But let's maybe take from a global perspective. When I took this role a year and a half ago, sort of kicking and screaming and reluctantly, quite frankly, given the dynamics of the world. But here we are, a year and a half later, and the world had been making so much progress with regards to reducing hunger around the world over the past really 200 years, and particularly in the last 50 years. But in the last 2 years, the hunger rate has spiked. It's gone from 777 million to 821 million. But the more complex, sad news is that the severe hunger rate, these are people literally marching toward the brink of starvation, who don't know where the next meal has risen from what was 80 million to 124 million in just 2 years. And the fundamental question would be, what's the driving cause? The number one driving cause is, of course, man-made conflict, whether you talk about Yemen or complex deterioration inside a country like Venezuela, or whether you're talking about Syria, Iraq, Somalia, northeast Nigeria, South Sudan. We're now feeding assisting over 90 million people on any given day. So when I got to the World Food Program, we were facing major financial issues. The United States was talking about cutting back, this new administration. We were facing 4 famines around the world. And so we were able to avert famines. And, of course, we were able to convince the United States that international aid was critical to not just the national security interests of any particular nation, but all for world peace and stability. And so the good news is donors around the world, including the United States, have not backed down, been stepping up. And we've raised about $1 billion extra, but we're still a couple of $1 billion short. Now, the number 2 driving force is climate extremes. And we can go from country to country and showcase where and how that impacts. But where you have destabilization and climate extremes is an absolute formula for migration and disintegration of many different dynamics within a culture. And so you might say that particularly in the Central South America region, and you may particularly notice that in the Sahel or the greater Sahel region from the Atlantic to the Red Sea, as people are migrating, moving. What we know at the World Food Program, that people don't want to leave. People just don't leave their home. I don't care whether they're left wing, right wing, whatever their color, their race, their religion, whatever. They want to be home. But when they don't have food security, every 1% increase in food security is a 2% increase in migration. And when you feed 90-something million people on any given day, you learn a lot about people. You know what they're thinking, their habits, their problems, their issues. And we do extensive surveying and analytics with people that we are feeding on every given day around the world. And there are common themes. And for example, let me just say in Syria, when there was migration out of Syria into Europe, this is a country of about 20 some odd million people, and been obviously going down. Now 5 or 6 million are in the surrounding neighborhood, so to speak, and then several million made it up into Europe with a small infiltration by extremist groups. The cost that we have for supporting or feeding a Syrian inside Syria is about 50 cents per day. Now that's almost double what the normal would cost to be, but it's a war zone and our logistical costs are higher. And we can feed people pretty inexpensively when you buy as much food as we do. Now, that same Syrian who does not want to be in Berlin, who does not want to be in Brussels, the humanitarian package there is 50 euros per day. That's 100 times more expensive. And they don't want to be there. In fact, they will move 2, 3, 4 times inside the country of their home country before they'll finally leave, whether it goes to Jordan or Lebanon or Turkey or wherever they can get access to. And it's really no different than you would see in Venezuela, what's taking place of 1 million in now Colombia, 800,000 in Ecuador. Then you add in the complexity of the dry corridor and the drought that's taking place. In fact, there was a news story today on CNN and Politics that showed that people are missing the point that a lot of us driving the caravan is hunger because of the drought in El Salvador and Honduras and Nicaragua, Guatemala. And so these are issues that need to be addressed. And this is where I think the World Food Program, with our experience, is saying we can operate in emergency conditions. No one can do that better than we can. But you're not addressing the root cause of the problems. If we can address the root cause, then in my opinion, we can eliminate migration by necessity, and you end up with migration by choice. And that's a pleasant discussion. And so as I say to my friends, the Republicans and Democrats in Washington, I said, why don't you agree to disagree, because you're consuming 100% of your time on whether there should be a wall, what the immigration policy should be. Why don't you just respectfully decide to lay that aside, and why don't we come together on addressing the root cause of the problem so that that no longer is a real serious, complex issue. And so the World Food Program, we are mostly seen as a humanitarian emergency relief, when in quite fact, is though we're the world's largest operation, we bring to the table development context for food security. And this is why it's so important to work with Canada, because Canada clearly understands the role of the humanitarian and development nexus, because the old silos that were created back in the 60s and the 70s, there's a development silo and there's a humanitarian emergency sort of response silo. These silos need to be broken down, giving the teams the flexibility to address more complex situations than there were before, because it's not quite so simple siloed now in how we need to address food security issues in areas that differ, whether it's in Central South America, whether it's in the Sahel or greater Sahel region, where you have 500 million people, not just 20 million, as I told, I think it was on France 24 television, and I said, if you think you're worried about 20 million, you wait till the 500 million are destabilized, because ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab are trying to exploit the fragility of where you have fragile governments, and then you have climate extremes coming upon the people there. And it's a very complex situation, but we have solutions that we know when we can come in with a flexible multi-year funding for long-term solution, we can solve the problems, and we can show you example after example, because there's a lot of donor fatigue out there. You can go in some of the African countries where some of the donors saying we've been putting money there for 30, 40, 50 years, whether it's through the United Nations or international aid, and we have nothing to show for it. And we're saying that every dollar we spend, we want, number one, an exit strategy. In other words, how do we achieve objectives? And we're no longer needed there. Create sustainability, self-sufficiency. So we've worked with food for asset type programs in these very fragile areas. And I need to wrap it up. But anyway, what we're doing with this, and school meals, and gender parity, and gender empowerment for women and girls, and all of these programs around the world is quite remarkable. And Canada is a major player in helping us lead the way. And so we're here to say thank you. Thank you very much for that partnership. We've got a lot more to do. And I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to be here, to really showcase the realities of how you're investing your money. And I can answer questions you may have to showcase why we believe it's a good investment, but we need to do more. And as my friends in the United States said, we're not backing down. Now you go tell our friends in Canada and in Europe that do more with us. And so, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that testimony. And of course, we are a subcommittee on human rights. So for the questioning, focus on the intersection of human rights and food security as well. We will start our first 7-minute round with Mr. Sweet.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Beasley, thank you. You're doing angels' work. Really appreciate it. I find it fascinating how the longer we live, and some things never change. You know, one of the foundational families of the scriptures, you know, Jacob and his sons ended up in Goshen because of food insecurity, and we're still talking about it today. I want to ask you about your donors, are they all nation states, or do you have some of the large foundations that are also donating to WFP?
Mostly states. We are, in fact, it's one of the areas the World Food Program has done very little in the private sector fundraising, and I'm bringing that now to the table. We're beginning to analyze and evaluate. I don't think we would be able to see on an amortized, annualized basis substantial, billions of dollars from the private sector, notwithstanding going into the internet and touching millennials with, because we believe that if you could touch 500 million millennials and get them to give $2 a year, that'll pick up $1 billion. Now, we're raising, when I arrived a year and a half, almost 20 months ago, we're now raising $4 million more per day than we were over a year ago. So that's a little over $1 billion. And that's come from primarily about 10 countries. Now, we have been able to touch into countries that historically have not been given, Saudi Arabia, UAE, but now we've been able to convince them that they must give, and they're stepping up. China's stepping up more than they ever have. Russia's stepping up a little bit more than they ever have. And so we're trying to do more. But the private sector is going to be the long-term solution for on-the-ground partnership with us. That's not just money, but expertise and economic empowerment.
Sustainability.
Yeah, development.
Part of your talking
Yeah.
about. Okay. And do you find that most of the nations keep their pledges, or you mentioned some positive stuff about others?
I heard a lot of stories when I'd got there, but so far, been pretty good, really good. Germany, let me just give you a few. The United States was giving us about $1.8 billion. And of course, everybody was concerned that the Trump administration was going to zero out. But now we're at almost $2.75 billion with the United States. We picked up about $1 billion more per year. Germany, I've been spending a lot of time with our friends that might be mutual friends in the Bundestag, explaining why you must be engaged and why it can't just be humanitarian relief. It's got to be development in the context, because if you don't have food security, almost nothing else matters. And so Germany stepped up a couple hundred more million. They were at 65 million 6 years ago. They're now at 800 million. The UK's gone from 300 or 400 million now up to about 600 million. The Nordic countries are on a per capita basis are doing really, really well. France gives about 30 million. It's an issue. They should step up more, particularly with the Sahel and the Francophone countries. The UAE and Saudis have really stepped up, but I think that started when, I don't know if you remember, a year ago there was a brutal 60-minute story on the Yemen war, and I just came out of the field and really was brutal on the Saudis, and whatever reason they came around, but that's improved, and the UAE has been really remarkable to work with in the last year.
We're getting your message that migration is a result of the lack of food security, and if you help there, it's much more effective economically than it is to do it after the fact, after the disaster has happened. Could you focus the rest of the time that you have for me on two areas that we've been studying? If time doesn't run out, the first one is Bangladesh and the Rohingya. We've studied long and hard on that, just what the World Food Program is doing there, and Venezuela, if they're accepting some help from you.
Both those, and of course, I just came out of the field, by the way, in Yemen. Yemen is a disaster, and we could spend hours on the humanitarian disaster there and what needs to be done. But Rohingya, I was just in Cox's Bazar about 5 weeks ago. We went from a small number of people to 1 million people just in a few months. And while we're not in charge of the camps, we have the engineering. Not many people realize how much the World Food Program does, because we're a logistics hub for the United Nations. And the engineering that takes place for bridges and airplanes and trucks and ships and everything, because we're carrying the supplies in for everybody, pretty much. And so the camp in Cox's Bazar was just, the situation is pretty bad. And so if you've ever been there or you've seen the pictures, we were concerned for several 100,000 people whose lives were at risk just from when the rainy season was coming. So we came in and did everything that we possibly could to secure up land sites and do some piping and bridging and things of that nature. Made a lot of progress, a lot of headway. Quite frankly, everybody has talked about the going back. If I can just speak frankly, I can't imagine people going back. What I heard, I mean, from mother to mother to mother, and some fathers who survived and weren't killed, hearing the stories of how their children were killed right before their very own eyes, and women raped, and people burned alive. And you could go back to that. I just don't see it. Now, there'll be some going back. There'll be certain promises made, but I don't see it. I hope that one day they can go back. What we've done is worked on digitizing every single Rohingya, so they'll have identification digitized with biometrics and identification that gives them some sense of identity for the first time in their lives. And so we're working with all the different other UN and international organizations to do what we can to stabilize the environment there. And of course, the military pretty much oversees the operations there, the Bangladesh military. And I've been meeting with, of course, the Prime Minister. You got elections coming up, creates dynamics in this situation, not to get into too much of that right here, because they are our host country. What we're trying to do is minimize the negative consequences on the local community, because this is an issue in itself. Environmental impact is a whole different discussion. But you can imagine a country that's been made a lot of headway in the last 25 years. There are not many jobs, and you can obviously understand the politics of not allowing Rohingya to come into the communities and have jobs. So we're working through a lot of these issues, but it's a sad state of affairs. Venezuela.
Sadly, we'll have to leave it there. Hopefully, we'll be able to get back to
All right,
Venezuela in the future
I'll
questions.
pull Venezuela in somewhere.
And we'll go to Ms. Khalid for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Beasley, for coming in today and for your very important testimony. You touched on this in your opening remarks. I want to talk to you and hear your views on the ever-growing crisis that is happening in Yemen, where 15 million people, as per WFP, are in food crisis and an emergency. Can you tell us what is the situation on the ground? What is causing this? And lastly, what can Canada do as our part to provide assistance to these over 15 million people that are facing this crisis and famine?
Yeah, I was just on the ground in Yemen for several days, in Aden, Sana'a, and Hodeidah. And if you can imagine the dangers of going to Hodeidah, everybody, UN security, you can't go to Hodeidah. And I said, I have to go to Hodeidah. I've got to stand at that port, and I've got to let the world see that you got to protect this port at all costs, because if this port shuts down, you will have unprecedented catastrophe. People have been saying that Yemen's on the verge of a catastrophe, and I said that is totally untrue. It is a catastrophe. Every 10 to 11 minutes, a child's dying now. We were assisting about 8 million people as of a few weeks ago on any given day. Those were severely hungry people who literally marching toward the brink of starvation. Today, based on our new numbers, it's jumped the severe hunger rate to between 15 and 16 million people. Now, the question you've got to ask, what's driving the substantial increase? Because the war's been there for several years. This is a country that was already very impoverished. The stunting rate was already one of the highest in the world. The rial had already been depreciating since 20 years ago from 70 to 1 to 215 rial to 1 the day before the war started, approximately. And when I was there a few weeks ago, it was 720 to 1. So you can imagine the purchase power, assuming there's anything to buy, coupled with the fact you have no money because there are no jobs. 8 million livelihoods destroyed since the war began. 1.2 million civil servants have received almost no pay in the past 3 years. There's no liquidity in the marketplace. So when you look in the last 3 months, the hunger rate has spiked 3.6 million in the last 3 months, 1.6 million in the last 30 days. Same war, nothing's really changed. So what's happening now? There's no liquidity anymore. There's no money. And nobody on the outside world wants to give credit anymore. It is a perfect storm. We've been able to avert famine in spite of the fights that we've had. A year ago, we were fighting, and I was hard on the Saudis. They had the blockade, weren't providing money for the humanitarian consequence, and so I really went after them pretty hard internationally. And the Houthis were so excited. Oh, we're so glad you're jumping on the Saudis. And I said, let me tell you something. I am not taking sides. I said, it's about human rights, human dignity, and when you cross that line, I will be on your back too. It's just a matter of when, if you do it. Well, 3 weeks ago, I met with the Houthis, and I was blistering them pretty hard because of lack of access. We resolved the blockade issue with the Saudis. They stepped up with funding. The UAE, by the way, has been quite remarkable to work with in the last year. Amazing change. They actually call us saying, what can we do? Is there anything we're not doing right that we can do better? Other than the issue of the war itself, of course, that's the driving dynamic here. But the Houthis, who control the access that we need in most of these areas where most of the people are, have been a problem. Access, lack of visas that we need for the number of people and the types of people we need, coupled with the equipment that we need. When you're feeding 8 million people on any given day, it takes a lot of movement of stuff. And so now I can honestly say, and I met with the Houthi leaderships, different, because the Houthis are not a simple dynamic. They're different Houthi leaders. Some of them have been a positive step forward in the last few weeks. I explained to them that I plan to tell the people in the world that people are going to be dying because you're not giving us the access. Now, I need for you to work with us, and many have. On the other hand, there's some Houthis that don't care. They don't care at all.
So what can Canada do to provide assistance on the ground? And we talk about providing humanitarian aid for food, et cetera, but do you think that that's a Band-Aid solution to the Yemen problem? And how can we provide more long-term sustainability, especially for food security as a country like Canada?
Several things here. First and foremost, and Canada has been helping us, I think, with $29 million with regards to Yemen just in the past 2 years. But the areas of school children where Canada has really helped us is also with nutrition, with lactating pregnant women, especially little girls. Canada's been great. Long term is a whole different dynamic here. And so let me add, this is notwithstanding the war coming to an end. Obviously, that's the best solution. The problem you have now is that you cannot solve the humanitarian crisis with a humanitarian solution now. It is too great. You must inject liquidity into the marketplace. And we've got a group of economists that are in our teams because economies determine food prices. Food prices can determine civil unrest. So we know this stuff. And my number one economist, I took with me into Yemen, and we met with the central bank, the governor of the central bank, along with other leaders of the country, the government of Yemen, as well as we met with the de facto leaders in other places, explaining to them that this was no longer a humanitarian solution alone. There must be an injection of approximately $200 million U.S. dollars of liquidity into the marketplace, and how that needs to be done to stabilize the rial, because the rial needs to come back down to somewhere below 450 to 1 to create economic viability again in the marketplace, because 90% of the food, 90% of the supplies for Yemen come from the outside world. And there's no longer any economy on the inside, so they can't grow their own food. They can't provide their own supplies. And so it is a disaster.
Okay.
And so anyway.
Sorry, that's the end of the time. We will go to Ms. Hardcastle for another 7 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I want to use my time to hear a little bit more about what are the safeguards that you have in place to ensure that a corrupt government or a rebel faction isn't misusing the food program or tying food to political support or military feeding first. I'm sure that you can go into that a little bit about some of the ways that you've Go ahead.
Sarah, we could actually spend hours on that. It's very important because no longer are we just bringing in commodities and humanitarian short-term emergencies. We're now doing cash-based transfers. We're the world's largest in the cash-based transfer system. We now provide a little bit less than $2 billion in cash-based transfer systems. And the way we do that is quite remarkable in itself. I don't know how much time we'll have to get in there. But whether you're doing cash-based transfers or whether you're doing commodities, having the monitoring systems in place is critical for assessing and monitoring. And so when we run into this every single day, you can imagine certain places, particularly in complex war areas where opposition forces don't want you to have access. They want to be able to deliver the food. And of course, what can happen with it? We're like, no, we don't do that. Here's a standard. We're neutral. We will feed all innocent people of any region. We don't care any other questions. So in Yemen, we've run into issues. In Syria, we might run into issues. South Sudan or Nigeria or Somalia or DRC, these types. And each place is different. But we have systems in place to minimize those risks. Now, because we're not in the nicest areas in the world. We're in the toughest places in the world that are fraught with corruption and disintegration of the normal laws of transparency and rule of law, et cetera. And so our teams, we put in the monitoring, what we need in place, and my teams understand when they suspect anything, immediately bring it to the attention and let donors know, because you're going to run into how do we react when we find these types of problems, and what systems do we have in place to minimize that risk. In cash-based transfer systems, for example, we've now created an entire new division on enterprise risk because when you're putting out a couple $1 billion of cash now, and how we do it and where we do it, and I say cash, for example, might be, we use biometrics now, whether it's eye scanning or fingerprinting. In every place we go and integrate this new technology, because when I arrived, there was a couple things that I was a little bit shocked about the UN system. I never was inside the UN system. That was why I was a little bit amazed that I ended up taking this role, because I always thought the UN was not as effective as it could be, and it's not. But it was a lot better than I thought it was. I sort of had, here's where the UN ought to be, here's where I thought it was. I think it was somewhere in between. But the World Food Program is a remarkable operation. I mean, they get it done. So the two areas that concerned me were the lack of digitization in the UN system, and the other was gender parity. I was just shocked that the UN was still having the discussion about gender parity in the year 2017 when I arrived. And I was like, really? You're still talking about this? Versus, and at the World Food Program, we like to think that we're the leader in women's empowerment, and we use the cash-based transfer system to substantially increase and improve women's opportunities in communities. Now, in the commodity field, where we use food for cash for assets and things like that, like in the Sahel, when we work with the women, you can be assured that the food goes where it needs to go. The women will make sure their little girls, their little boys get the food. When we integrate biometrics and digitization, we have found there's a savings between 5 and 35%, eliminating duplication. Because you can imagine if you're in a country and you've got 1 million refugees and you don't have enough money to give everyone full rations, I don't care what, every mother's going to look for a way to get more rations. You don't blame them. But authenticity and integrity of the systems. And so we put in the monitoring and systems in place. But I can just tell you from experience, when we deal with the women, they make sure they take that money and they buy the right food and they get it to the children. We actually have now established an app in certain places we're trying now, where, like in Lebanon, the old way was just bringing food, because you got all the million and more refugees inside Lebanon. So we came in and established 500 stores, and the women will come in, the refugees, primarily Syrian refugees and Palestinian refugees. They'll come in, they get the fingerprint ID, and they'll go into the store. 1/3 of the food they buy is produced locally, which helps the local economy. 1/3 is processed locally, which helps the local economy, and 1/3 comes from imports. And so we take opportunity to leverage the dollar to maximize the benefits for dignity, empowerment of the families, as well as trying to improve the economics of already a very difficult situation for the hosting country. How do we minimize the burden upon them? And of course, Lebanon and Jordan, my goodness, look what burden they've shouldered in the last few years, and we cannot afford for Jordan or Lebanon to collapse. Turkey, of course, has taken millions of refugees, but the system's in place. We're always working to improve that all the time, because that is critical institutional integrity. When you're feeding that many people, that many places, you're going to run into issues. There's always someone trying to beat the system somewhere. And so when we find it, what happened? Why didn't we know about it beforehand? What systems change do we need to put in place? Yeah, that kind of thing.
Thank you. I want to thank Mr. Beasley very much. I think we could have listened to you all afternoon. So thank you very much for taking the time and being here with a very informative testimony. We will now suspend for just 1 minute and go back in camera for committee business. Thank you.
Thank you.